All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. We've got a special session for you today. I'm really excited about this. We're going to be talking about a series of blog posts that we've been in, basically an interesting topic, I think. It's about customer complaints. And this is something we get a lot of questions about, obviously, as a customer feedback system, reaching out to people and getting a lot of feedback from customers. So this is something that um, based on our experience could really help out. Hoping to share that. Um, Today I've got Aaron with me, our Chief Marketing Officer, Aaron Weike. So we're going to both be kind of tag teaming this one, and we're going to talk about um, each of these areas of customer complaints, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a few other product-related things during the session. So in the last webinar, so last month we covered a whole bunch of new features that we were just wrapping up and that we polished off in June. We also talked about improving your email response funnel and did a pretty lively Q&A, lots of good questions going on there. And this month we're going to talk about customer complaints. I want to talk briefly about Zapier integrations at the end, some progress we made there. It's pretty exciting. And then obviously do a Q&A, and feel free to jump in on the GoToWebinar control panel and ask your questions as we go. So feel free to jump into the questions and ask away, and we'll be watching those. Thomas is also on, along with Aaron and I, and we'll just be watching for your questions, and as they come up, we'll make sure to get those answered. So let's jump right in. There are a series of articles that we wanted to cover that basically made June all about customer complaints. And Mike Blumenthal published a whole series of articles about this, and we, of course, talked as a team and collaborated. And he made these based on, based on the experience that Mike and Aaron and I have, in the past, and also just based on a lot of, seeing a lot of these customer interactions between business owners and customers. And the first of the articles I want to dig into is 5 good things about customer complaints. And so what we're going to do here, a slightly different format. I want to bring Aaron in, and hopefully his audio is working. And let's just kind of talk about. I wanted to talk about the article a little bit. I'll set it up, and then probably I want Aaron to weigh in with some of his thoughts and comments on this as well. And we're just basically going to share some best practices with you that we've found. So, Aaron, are you on? Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. And I wanted to point out to everyone, if they have a complaint about today's webinar, to send that to Don. And if you have positive things, send that to me.
Perfect. As long as we get them, I'm happy.
That's right.
Good. So this first article, what we're gonna do is include the URL by each of these articles here, in case you want to dig in for more details. But basically, the whole idea is of this first article is to look at customer complaints, and obviously when we talk to new customers of GetFiveStars, the biggest fear is like, well, I don't like getting complaints, right? I don't like getting them, and I just want to share a quick story from my perspective is. And you're going to see we've got a lot of data because we did some surveys, and we've got some good data to back this stuff up. But I had an experience, and I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences, but I had experience where I was recommended to go to a sandwich shop for, one of my friends said, "Oh yeah, you're going to love this place. You got to go check this place out." And it was right near where my office was located. So I walked down the street and I went to the sandwich shop, and I went in, ordered a sandwich, went to the cooler, got a drink, went to ring it up, and they charged me like $17.80 for the sandwich and for the drink, and I just was shocked by how expensive it was. And but I mean, I didn't say anything. I sat down and I ate the sandwich. It was really good. I really liked the sandwich, but I basically walked out of there thinking to myself, I'm just never coming back. Right? I'm just not going to come back here. I'm not mad enough that I'm going to go to Yelp or Google or Facebook and leave a negative review, but I'm probably not going to go back there. And since then, I've told this story to several other people, and it's just one of those things that they never even knew, right? They never even understood. And you're going to see in some of our data that we show later, people don't tend to just naturally go back and complain. It's not like I was all pissed off, like there's a fly in my soup or something. It was more just like, wow, that was really expensive and I just can't afford to keep going there to lunch. Um, anyway, so what we want to do is kind of look at customer. If a customer does take the time to come and complain, it's a good thing, right? And see that a lot of unhappy customers don't come back, just like I said, but a complaint is a buying signal. It's saying, help me understand why I should keep coming here, right? Like it's sort of like it's not that they're trying to be mean to you. They're trying to rationalize like what happened, why they might come back. It's private. It's between you and your customer. They haven't gone to Yelp yet or to Facebook or Google and left you a bad review. And most of the time when you resolve it, you're going to keep the customer. So basically, I mean, Aaron, what were your thoughts on this article? I'd love to hear some of your perspectives on, after we both kind of read through these articles and talked through them with Mike.
Yeah, obviously just a fantastic series of 6 articles that are up, and we actually have one more coming tomorrow from Mike to kind of wrap up that series. But, this first one to me was really kind of one of those, it almost felt like irony, right? Like how can there be positives about complaints? That's not how a business, usually feels about complaints. That's a negative feeling and a yuck, and I disappointed a customer, and I don't like hearing those bad things. It's hard enough to run my business. So, even at the very high level, and just as the title suggests, is like, can you even shift your mind to realize that there is a silver lining? There are good things and positives about a customer complaining about your product or service, and that can be really hard. And that was behind, when we were choosing imagery to go along with it, right? Like your business is your baby. And the crying baby here, right? You feel upset as if a small child, like candy's been taken from you when someone complains about your business. So, in being really tough, and Mike did a really great job of kind of addressing 5 really high level items on, these are actually positives to receiving a complaint about your business. You have to work hard to shift your mind to look at it that way. But they really truly are. And most what really stood out to me and had an impact with me was the second one, right? That a complaint is actually a buying signal. The person actually wants, some type of resolution so they can continue to work with you. Their complaint in whatever channel, however they put it out to you, it's almost it's a diamond in the rough, right? There's some friction in the complaint and the process and whatever else, but if you can respond and if you can reach a resolution, you're likely to keep that customer, which plays into number 4. 70% of the time, studies show if you resolve it, you keep them, and that's a fantastically high number for a situation that started off by something going wrong.
Yep, it's amazing. I mean, I also feel like different businesses have different nuances. I mean, one thing we found in a previous business that Thomas and I did, we have made some software for WordPress themes for business owners, and one thing that I found was really interesting is that on the internet, when people are buying from you, so my point is different businesses have different nuances. I found over time, we found that there's this immediate uh, psychological thing that happens when someone buys something on the internet, especially a few years ago. They immediately went into this mode of like, oh my God, did I just get ripped off? Like what, how can I trust these people? And then they would, anything like that made them nervous, they would send you an email or they would try to get support right away. And just by like listening and acknowledging right away, oh yep, we got it, we got you covered, we're here, what can we help you with? Immediately they felt better, like right away. And what I found is when someone did have a problem or an issue, and you can imagine with software, people have issues that they get stuck with, and you listen to them and resolve it, they become like your best customer. So we ended up with some of our very best customers because they were frustrated or got a complaint. We helped them, and they started telling everybody about us. So I think
Yep.
it's pretty
And
cool.
really, in closing on this article before we move to the next one, Don, is like, the last one, having that perception, I think is the biggest differentiator, right? Like, does the business owner, does the manager, does the staff, do they feel like, that a complaint is a way to understand how the customer feels and they can improve that part of their business? Or do they automatically jump to customers are crazy and customers are never satisfied, right? And I feel like in working with hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of businesses, and a lot of them being small businesses, that's really the big divide where I see the majority focused on a blanket statement of you can't make everybody happy and they want too much and customers are just, consumers are just crazy these days, on over to the ones who just automatically root themselves to no matter what, this gives us a chance to learn, evaluate, and improve.
Yep. Yeah. So, all right, on to the article number two. We just kind of, I guess I missed this slide. We already talked about it. It's a buying signal. Um, but on to number two is really eight things that cause customers to complain. And this is based on a survey, which came up with some pretty interesting results. And by the way, as we go through these, I would love it if you guys had situations that challenge these notions. I would love to hear them. Just go ahead and let us know. I think these topics are controversial. I mean, it's all easy for us to sit on a webinar together and talk about how customer complaints are a good thing. It's still, we've all been through that emotional piece of like, it can be very emotional. So if you dig in, right, if there are questions or something, we'd love to hear them. So this next survey basically try to dive into, what are the things that cause people to complain, and some interesting highlights that came out of it were, most of the complaints, 57%, if you're going to group them, were customer service and employee behavior. And then the next grouping would be low product quality, speed, and high prices. And interestingly to me, high prices was only like 5%. So like price was the primary thing that it was not a primary thing that caused people to complain.
Yep, and probably, no surprise, Don, right? Like rude behavior, poor employee service, bad customer service, all of those things leading the way. But to me too, it really helps a business, and most successful businesses understand just how important customer service is, right? Your staff, their interaction, their training, the way they resolve things, the way they present things, the way they interact, like it's everything. It's service, it's attitude, it's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So, in knowing how important that is, for most businesses, as they're getting the feedback and they get complaints in this area, it allows them to work on it as a whole. Like, is their brand known as having poor customer service? I mean, we all might have certain brands that we interact with that we either choose not to do business with them because we feel like that brand or that company has terrible customer service, or we know going into it we might even have a less than desirable experience because while they might win on price or product, or a specific result, that the customer service side might really languish. And for the business, you can capture that and work on it as a team at a location and all the way down to the individual, employee level, right? When certain employees are being mentioned in the feedback, good or bad, especially bad, you can then address and be like, hey, we have multiple instances where customers have cited your, rudeness or lack of knowledge or whatever else, and then work to develop that into a strength of that employee instead of a weakness.
Yeah, for sure. I always think of it like when if you ever go into a really nice restaurant or a nice hotel, you can see that the staff has really been trained to welcome you and take care of you. Like if you ever go to a Ritz-Carlton or something, these people, all the staff has been trained in a certain way. And a lot of times what I notice in small businesses and smaller, not everybody's the Ritz, right? Not everybody has the resources to send their employees to training programs. But I think where a lot of small businesses that I've seen miss the mark is when, maybe they've got employees that they never really sat them down and helped them understand like how to greet people or how to have and take care of customers. And so kind of have a little bit of a culture in the company of how to do that. And I noticed the difference a lot when you go into a nice place versus when you go into, a not so nice place. Even like the Apple store, right? If it's such a popular retail place, they have a commitment where they train all the employees, like whenever somebody comes in, they need to be greeted by a person within 20 seconds. Even if you can't take care of them right now, you need to go up and greet them and get their name on a list and make sure that they feel like they're going to be taken care of. And so those little touches can resolve a whole lot of these complaints that you see over here. Over half of the chart is based on that stuff.
Well, now that I know that, Don, I'm going to walk into an Apple store and I'm going to try to hide, and I'm going to try to make it to like 30 seconds before they can find me
Yeah,
and
yeah, I got
greet
to
me.
38 seconds. That's a record.
Yep. And I totally agree. One experience that stands out for me, just recently went through a kitchen remodel, and the countertop manufacturer that we chose, the company's name is Cambria, and it's a manufactured hard stone. And just every touch point from the selection of what top we were going to when they pre-measured to installation was just fantastic. But then 2 weeks after our counter installed, I got a package from UPS, and here it was, the same stone selection I'd made, and they had made me like a 18-inch by 18-inch cutting board, custom like cheese meat cutting board, out of the same material that I chose for my countertop. So here's this just unbelievably unexpected gift at the end, and it was personalized to my experience because it was the same as the countertop that I had chosen, and it absolutely wowed me. And then they had a nice little postcard in there that was signed by the installer, and then they also asked for feedback at that standpoint. So a complete trained on customer service and touch points at every step, and then a huge surprise and delight at the end, even though I already loved the product. They just put me over the moon and absolutely won me over as a brand advocate with that small touch.
Just classy, right? When
Yep.
somebody, a business acts like that, that's first the word that comes to mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last thing for me in this article is really understanding, and this is all part of it, right? I mean, let's make no secret here. We're here and you're on the Get 5 Stars, webinar. This just points out to me even more of the reason why you need to listen to your customers, and you need to offer the kind of touch points and inroads that our platform offers. Is you have to listen to your customers. You have to have a way for them to express their negative experiences as well. And by using, the first step, not just the rating, but the private feedback that Get 5 Stars offers, is it allows you to unearth these situations where customers aren't happy or something doesn't go right, so that you can address them. And you can also see, are there trends in what isn't working for people, right? If you continually have complaints about rude staff at the counter or answering the phone or whatever else, you're able to then do something about it.
Yep. So I was asking a minute ago for things to challenge these notions. Winnie's got a really good one. She says, so we're a divorce law office that deals with many contentious divorces that go to trial, not exactly a feel-good business. When we do very well, our clients end up with half their savings, their kids half the time, and typically have to sell their homes. And the trial will have cost them a great deal of money. We find they call us their angels or express gratitude, but still don't rate us well. And we don't want them to be repeat customers. We hope they don't need us again. But what are your thoughts on the challenges of this type of business and seeking good reviews?
Yeah, well, Winnie, I was just on a podcast in the legal space the other day, and it is much tougher based on different kinds of cases and outcomes and all those things. So one, I think take a look at your feedback on more of a bell curve, right? Like the 0 to 10 scale, well, that helps grab NPS and whatever else. You probably have to understand that no matter what, it's a difficult situation, and your outcome might not be able to be a 10. Just based on all the emotional pieces that are at work there. So you might even need to develop a little bit in knowing, like, hey, when are we really winning? Is it when we deliver someone feeling a 7 or an 8? And kind of adjust what your expectations are to that. And as far as translating feedback and how the customer feels to online reviews, the biggest thing I can say is, can you seed your customers to understand the types of things that they can write about you in a review, right? Like, can you pare it down to things in the relationship, like you were knowledgeable, you followed up frequently, you were great for being in touch and in contact, and you empathized and really understood their situation. If you work some of that into how you're asking for the review and educating, these are the things I would love you to write an online review about, not about your case, the outcome specifically or whatever else, but what are the professional elements as an attorney that you expected and that I delivered on? You might increase your chances there, but it is really tough when you're dealing with things that might end up with some really tough emotional outcomes like what you describe here, or things like how you're dealing with a DUI or something like that, where you definitely don't want to talk about the specifics of your case. Root it to the professional relationship, and if you can give your customers ideas on the things you want them to talk about, that might be helpful in procuring some more reviews, because they don't have to disclose personal then.
Yep, that's good. Good, Aaron. Thank you. Thanks for that great question, Winnie. All right, so the next article we want to talk about, what do you lose what happens when things go south? You lose more than you ever know. Basically, based on this the survey was, hey, when you've had a bad experience with a local merchant, what do you typically do? Complain is 34%. Seems like pretty high number, but if you look at the people who remain quiet and never go back, or leave a bad online review, it's like 66% of unhappy customers will stay silent. Even if they may even come back, they're still not happy, and they're not going to be a promoter for you. So that's a pretty large number of people that will never say anything, right? But for the other part of this, though, we found, which was interesting, is that 71% said that if the owner asked for feedback, they would express it. They would tell them, which is huge, right? So, and then the follow on to that was, if they resolve the situation, would you go back? And most people will stay and tell other people about you. So it's super important to be proactively asking people for this information, because they're not just going to volunteer it. But if you ask them, they'll tell you, and they'll stay on as a customer.
Yeah, and to me, Don, the first question out of all the data points and the things throughout these posts and these surveys, that one to me is the fear factor. That one is the most scariest out of all these things, is that the majority of your customers that are unhappy are basically silent but deadly to your business, right? Our study showed 66%. I saw other ones, Help Scout has put out in the past, where over 90% of unhappy customers stay silent. Like, it's such a danger, right? Because as our graphic in the blog post called out, is like, you don't even know what went wrong to fix it. So you're completely helpless to understanding their situation, whether the customer misunderstood or some one-off random thing is what influenced the outcome being wrong, or if it is part of a certain something going on that is repetitive in your business. So those silent customers can just be lethal to your business, because first and foremost, they're silent with you, and you're the one that needs to know about it. And secondly, they might not be silent at all with friends, colleagues, neighbors, the next person that asked them, or even an online review site, right? They might choose to voice their opinion everywhere else, but not to you. So it's extremely important to understand, as much as you can do to offer routes for people to give you feedback, ask them for feedback, everything else, the last thing you want is your client being silent. That's really the thing to avoid.
So you just redefined SBD, silent but deadly.
Yeah,
something
it's
worse.
now related to something else.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy. It's complaints, though. I like this point number 2. Complaints give you a chance. So it's almost like, in my mind, even just constantly trying to reframe my thinking into, I want to hear these complaints. Like, I want to actively seek them out, because it gives me a chance to deal with them.
Yep, and just as the second question shows, right? Like, most people are open. Like, if they are asked, they will give you feedback, right? And it's something we discuss a lot with our platform. And we understand a lot of customers engage with our platform because they really look at online reviews as the prize. But I challenge businesses all the time to, the amount of value in the feedback you get privately is actually tenfold to the online reviews, because more of your customers are actually willing to give you that. So there's so much more you can do with it to shape the experience, to keep that customer, to know who your happy customers are, and everything else. And I get it. Online reviews are public and forward-facing and can possibly help you land that next customer. But so are all of your customers are public and forward-facing and vocal about your business and everything else. And if you don't know which ones are happy and which ones are unhappy, whether or not that hits written text and a star rating in an online review, you're really operating a little bit blindly as to what the public perception is of you. But when you listen and you ask, you're able to do so. And then, the last one, right, is if they resolve a complaint with you, the overwhelming majority, over 70% are like, yeah, actually, I totally want to continue to do business with them, because you've been able to show, like, yep, you're not perfect, but you worked hard to resolve the situation and got a resolution in place, and you kept that customer and kept, raising the lifetime value of what that customer can be to your business.
Yep, right on. All right, so this next survey was really interesting. Are we as good as we think? So Mike did a survey here to try and understand what small businesses think about their service versus what consumers think, and this was kind of fascinating. So if you looked at the numbers, the red represents the small business owners, and the blue represents the consumers. And the question, basically, what percentage of merchants provide excellent service? That was the question to the consumers. And then what was the question to the business owners, I think, was, do you provide excellent service? Right, Aaron? It was something like that. So I was trying to compare,
Yep.
like, how the business owners perceive their service versus how the consumers do. And obviously,
Yep.
from this, the business owners had a higher estimation of their service than the consumers did.
Yep, and it was looking at this not just from like your own business, but like, do small businesses in general provide, fantastic customer service? And you can see from identifying when you're in that group and you are a small business owner or manager or whatever else, you think about it and you view it a lot differently. But as we all know, perception is reality. So the perception of our customers is extremely important. So, there definitely is a gap there. And it's not a horrible one. I mean, it's this tough thing, right? When you run a business, you have pride in it yourself, and you take a lot of pride. But what you have to be careful of is when that pride starts, closing your eyes and covering your ears, and not paying attention to things that might be wrong or might not go the right way or perfectly or anything else. And that's where you really look at the danger of bias in customer service, because you're not open to your customer's viewpoint. You are only open to your own viewpoint, and a lot of times you're so far in the weeds with it, you're not going to be able to see what's going on anyway.
Yeah, very true. I mean, for me, the this is kind of a hard one, right? Is because it's almost like we're all proud of our businesses and what we do, and we try our best, and to think that maybe we're not, you know, on the balance, we're not doing as well as we could be or as we think. That's hard to medicine, right? And so for me, the way I try to deal with this is, a lot of times you'll get a complaint from a customer that is just, you hear it and you're just, that is such crap. I'm not even like going to listen to it. I mean, have you ever felt that way, where somebody's complaining about something that just doesn't even seem legitimate or related? And what I try to do is, in those cases, I always try to say, look, even if I don't agree with this complaint, what can I learn from it? I'm trying to correct that bias, like trying to challenge myself. Say, is this bias affecting me, that I think I'm doing something better than I really am? And so it's not a negative thing. It's just trying to make sure that I'm taking that into account and like look at it and say, well, okay, maybe this is maybe an invalid argument that the customer is making here, but what could I learn from it? And a lot of times, once I kind of approach them that way, I see it a little differently.
And as this slide points out, Don, right, when we're emotionally charged about, we care about our business, we're biased, all those things. First of all, it's not going to allow us to be very receptive to those that have complaints, right? Ones that might not even be hardline complaints or even full complaints, right? Like, we lose all reality of context because we're emotionally rooted in what they're talking about. And then, when that happens, it's even harder to fix them because we're not addressing the facts in it. We might only be addressing the emotional piece in it, and then we can even do more harm then because our emotional side causes us to be defensive and no, there's no way that happened, and you're crazy, and I don't want to work with someone who attacks my business and everything else, when that might not even be where it's coming from the customer. So there's definitely in this post, Mike pointed out some really great things to understand, that perceptions differ, and the best way that you can handle that is to first of all understand that, be open to it, and then make sure you just have things in check before you go through a resolution process to deal with facts instead of emotion.
Yeah, and I just want to also make the point here that I know from a lot of the names here in the webinar, many of you are agencies who are helping small business owners with their marketing, with their website, and with their reputation management. So our hope is that the data from these surveys and the conclusions we've drawn will help you guys to make the case with your customers too. I mean, because it's something that all of us probably on this call have had the experience of being a business owner at some point, and in one way or another, and we can all identify with like how hard this is, right? So that's why we're trying to quantify it a little bit and come up with some best practices that we could use it if you need those to help educate your customers, or whether you're running your own small business. This is the kind of stuff that I'm constantly coming back to myself and trying to make sure that I'm internalizing it.
Yep. Well, we all do better, Don, when we have a little bit of framework to go off of and a process we put in place, instead of just winging it every time we run into the situation. So hopefully all of our customers can use some of these things and kind of create their own snapshot of what their complaint strategy might look like, from how open they are to it, to how they plan it, how they communicate it to all of their team, everything else. And we also have a little bit more on that when we get to a few of the other posts Mike wrote.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So the next survey was all about the next article is all about how quickly should a business respond, like how fast do you need to respond to a complaint, right? And some high-level tips here, and then we'll get into the details. But I'm going to come back to the high-level tips because I think it's important to figure out, what I'm missing in here, Aaron, and maybe you can help me with this. This is more about how we expect a response, but how quickly we should respond. I'm missing that chart, and I think if I remember right, people didn't expect to respond immediately, and of course it depends. If they're on the phone, maybe they want some sort of a response, but it was more like people expected between a day or two before they expected a response.
Yep. Yeah. So the breakdown was, less than 2% thought a response immediately. 15% fell into 1 to 3 hours for a response. 38%, the highest, was 1 day. They wanted a response in 1 day, and 30% in 3 days. So you see 68%, the main bulk was kind of a 1 to 3 day area. So definitely doable for any business to be able to respond within a day to 3 days. And then 12% said a week. So if anything, Mike, as he pointed out in the post, he was really surprised that it was that lenient, that there was actually that amount of time for someone to respond. But then we also looked at it as like, that's great. That creates a great environment for a business to be able to, over deliver here, right? Because the consumer, this basically shows, man, if you respond within hours, that they're definitely going to be happy with how you followed up with them. And then, we also point out, right, is like, one thing is a response, just to say, hey, we've heard you, and we understand there was an issue, and here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to do next to figure this out, or will you tell us more information? So that's the response side. This is not saying to, completely have a resolution to it,
right.
In that time frame. So as quick as you can respond, that's going to help you exceed expectations. And then from there, just keeping people abreast on what you're looking into, or what else you need, or how you're going to figure out a response, and then being able to deliver on that is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of one of my notes from this article, is that what I have found is just the act of acknowledging a complaint starts to diffuse the situation. I mean, you must follow through, right? You have to follow through and act resolve it. But just the act of listening and acknowledging that complaint is it's amazing how many times I've seen that in my business and in other businesses where someone's upset and is comes over and listens to you, then boom, it just really settles things down a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as people, we all just want to feel like we matter and that we're being listened to. And so many times, just that act of listening. Now, with the caveat though, is I think one of the conclusions we kind of drew out of this was it depends somewhat on like how they communicated the response. I mean, the complaint, right? Like if someone is right there in the restaurant with a complaint, you're kind of forced to do something, in a shorter time frame than if someone sent an email, right, or filled out a website form. So sometimes the method of the complaint dictates the response time, but the trick is, make sure you have enough time so that you're not reacting emotionally. I like this tip of that's in the blog post. If you read it, it says if the customer remains angry, capture their information and call them back. Give them a short time frame. So it's not like you're going to wait a long time, but you're just trying to allow them to cool down and make sure you're not responding emotionally. So that's really the biggest thing about this response time thing is it's great to like try to respond right away, but then you also have to make sure that people have time to sort of settle down so that it's not an emotional exchange.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I think the other thing was the other takeaway from this article was just to set a almost kind of in writing, say, hey, I'm gonna we're gonna have a policy at this company on how we respond, and like setting a time frame and saying you've got to find what's right for your business, but as an example, respond within an hour, resolve within a day. Like having that as a guideline so that everyone understands it, and then here's how we're going to respond to situations. I think that's a great sort of best practice for this.
Yeah, anytime, just as we talked about before, right? Anytime you can simplify it and make it consistent and communicate that to your team of 2 or 200 or 2,000, you're definitely going to be better off to hold everybody accountable to that same procedure.
Yep. All right. The next article was all about it is all about 8 steps for dealing with a customer complaint. So just having a written plan or sort of like a step-by-step, how are we going to deal with situations where customers are upset? I mean, I think it's really important to have something like this in writing. Every business should have. It doesn't have to be complicated, but something written down that says, how are we going to deal with complaints? What's our time frame? What is the process, right? And the suggestion that Mike put forth in his article is, make sure number one, like here's an example of like the steps: own the issue, respond quickly to all complaints based on the guidelines we talked about, really spend the time to hear your customer and what they're saying. If there was an issue, make sure you explain to them what happened. Amazingly, once you explain what happened, it's an incredible thing that I just don't quite understand. It works on me. I know that's happened to me before when I've been upset about something and they come out and say, well, here's what happened. Normally we don't have this situation, but we had some construction happening nearby and that's what caused, boom. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, gosh, you couldn't really help that. I understand. It just calms me right down.
Yep. Or even understanding the balance between number 4 and number 1. If all your explanation is blaming everyone else and even sometimes the customer for what went wrong, that won't work either, right? So you do have to follow the right balance between owning the issue, definitely explain the details, and even if you need to own up, be like, hey, here's what happened. We had too many new employees on the floor at the same time and not enough experienced people, and moving forward now we're not going to do that. We're going to pay more attention to a balance so we have more senior people to be able to answer these tough questions or deal with the situation like yours that happened.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then obviously you have to actually resolve the situation, and then rewarding the customer for their effort. I mean, that's why a lot of times, a place will give you a free appetizer, or they'll make something for free for you, or they'll do something because they're telling you, look, I appreciate you taking the time to give me this information, right? It's just like we talked about earlier. You've got to treat these complaints like treat these complaints like valuable data. As Thomas said, these are free suggestions to improve your business. He put that in the chat window. I agree. And the other part of this is that here you've got an existing customer. Treat them like gold, right? If you have somebody that's already a customer, you want to keep them. Um, and then the last step is just follow up with your customer afterward and make sure that you resolve the situation. How did we handle this for you? And that's a great time to ask for the review, right? Is or once or the testimonial or whatever it is, because now you've got a happy customer, someone that knows that you cared about them, listened to them, and went through extra effort to resolve it for them.
Yep. So one thing we didn't touch on here from Mike's post is he had a couple of setup items before these 8, and I thought those were extremely valuable too. And one, it was really about are you ready to handle complaints? And one was putting your complaint plan in writing, right? Like, can you make it concrete? Can you harden it, and make sure that you and your staff and everything else understands it? And the second that is super important to me is, do you make your complaint policy easy and responsive and everything else? And this comes to a number of different things, right? One, are all your employees, are they enabled to handle a complaint, right? If a complaint has to go through a chain of command and you have to hand somebody off to 4 people, I mean, think about the times where if you complain and you're like, well, you need to talk to this manager and they're not here right now and everything else, like, now complaining just got harder for you. Even though you're the one that had a problem and weren't served right, you have to go through all the effort to call back at a later time and try to get a hold of that certain person and everything else that's there. So enabling, a majority of your staff to field those complaints and actually do something frontline about it. It might not be the complete resolution, but to at least get it started without the first move being a handoff can be very important. And second, that I look at, that I really try to preach to people all the time, is like, do you make it easy? I mean, I look at, so let's just pick on restaurants for a minute. Have you ever gone to a restaurant website and right on the homepage is a button that says, give us your feedback? I've yet to see that once ever. So I have to click through 5 or 6 different things to find out how to lodge a complaint or to give them feedback, good or bad. We're obviously talking about bad and complaints, but it's unreal that it should be so hard for me to figure out how I can complain or offer some constructive criticism or anything else, or find the GM's information. Like, you're putting all the work on your customer to do that. And you might also be agitating them even further instead of just front and center, like, tell us about your visit, right on the homepage. You don't have to hunt around for this. We actually want to hear from you. I mean, that's something that can make that customer feel validated and not give them any more ill feelings about what went wrong than you hear it all the time, where people end up having as much to complain about the complaint process as they did about their original complaint. They're put on hold 12 times, rerouted to 6 people, sent 4 emails, this was supposed to happen and didn't. I mean, it's really amazing to me how businesses drop the ball on just making it easy. And I guarantee you all of them could instantly look and say, here's how we can make it super easy.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's like one of the big challenges. How do you make it easy? How do you make sure everyone on the team understands how to handle a complaint? That's why for, at least for me, these things should be written down, even if it's only a 1-pager. It's something that everyone can relate to. It's something tangible.
Yep. And then, lastly, with what your slide up right now, right, is like, do you even consider, right, a complaint is actually a contribution, right? And that doesn't mean every single complaint. Don't look at this as like, oh, I'm throwing money at these people to please them, or I'm throwing them an offer to make them happy because they're unhappy. But, do you truly look at it, are you using any of the feedback you get in 5 stars? And even if it's middle of the road, what happened if you reach out to that customer and sent them a postcard and even a $5 gift card and saying, like, hey, thanks, we're glad you had a good meal, but you did bring the attention our bathrooms weren't clean. We've made some steps to make that better, but we appreciate your feedback. So, here's a $5 gift card for giving us that feedback, right? So at the end of it all, and you're doing it by telling them, we appreciate your contribution to helping us be a better business. I think that's something that a lot of businesses could definitely embrace, instead of just, only trying to, hey, here's here's a free meal because you rated us a 0 and you were so utterly upset and we made you wait too long and the food was cold and it was made wrong and everything else. But, just what are some of the ones in the middle where it actually is, good communication that they gave you, and they might not be raging mad, but you can definitely do something about how long they had to wait on hold, or the fact that a ball got dropped somewhere, or a detail was missed, or it didn't meet their expectations. I think that's a really great opportunity, again, to surprise and delight people, because they might have said, I was just giving you this criticism because I thought it would help your business, not to receive anything. So now you've surprised me by caring that much and giving me a gift in return. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Great. Well, that's that's basically the tour of of our customer complaint month in June, where we like this idea of picking themes like this, and we pick these based on where we hear the most, where people have the most trouble, right? And this is a good one, just how to deal with complaints. I mean, we have a system that proactively helps people ask their customers for feedback, and it's not always good feedback, right? So how do you deal with that? How do you work with it? That's what we're trying to do here, is provide some really cool, actions and best practices. Matt
Yep.
is
And
asking.
and
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out real quick that Mike's last post it's around 13 ideas to make your business more complaint friendly, and that'll be up tomorrow morning on our blog. So that should be a nice closure, just giving you ideas to build off this fantastic series Mike put together.
Yeah. So Matt's asking, what is a best practice to reward customers without having to worry about others taking advantage of the situation and complaining just to receive a gift? Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, so yep, and so I'd really look at it, right. I don't think, Matt, that you're advertising out there saying like, hey, if you give us feedback and complain, we're going to reward you with something. I just think of it as small, even periodically, just when you go through your feedback and you get, and it's, like I said, it's not even the people that rate you a 0 or a 2, but look at some of your passives, right? People rated you a 7 and 8, and is there a constructive piece of criticism in there that, is construed as a complaint that actually makes you better business by listening to that person, right? So I don't think you have to set a rule and do it for everyone. I definitely think if you isolate some of them and reach out and let them know that, you appreciate them communicating that and you're doing something about it and you want to thank them for the time they put in to give you that feedback, I think that's a fabulous idea. You're absolutely right. Yes, something can be out of control or gamed or whatever else if upfront you're saying, I always look at those things that, yes, it can help you get more feedback when you tell people like, hey, give us your feedback, and right, Subway gives you a free cookie if you give feedback, or all those other things. But then it's like, are they only giving feedback to get the cookie, or are they truly giving you feedback because it matters to them in a good way or a bad way for what's there? So I would say at least a small amount. Just randomly select some of them. You don't have to promote it. Just do it, and see what happens. I'm more than willing to guess people will be extremely appreciative that you made them feel heard and you valued and rewarded what their feedback was. And Don, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed by talking to a lot of businesses that certainly this does happen once in a while, where people kind of, the word gets out and, oh boy, they'll give you something, or they'll give you a free appetizer if you just do this. But what I've heard almost unanimously is like, there's a little bit of that, but not as much as you'd think, and it's still well worth the effort. It's well worth doing, even though there's just a little bit of taking advantage of going on. And I think it's one of those things you have to just monitor, I guess. But I found that it's the payoff is just so huge that it doesn't turn into a negative on the business. So,
Nope.
but everybody's gotta look at that in their own perspective. So, okay, well, great. Yeah, thanks again for Mike for this amazing series. I'm super excited about the data that we've captured here, and basically, being able to back up some of the anecdotal things that we have seen in our business, uh, dealing with lots of customers giving feedback, and with our customers, collecting feedback. And so it's nice to have some of this data and some of these best practices. A couple of other things I wanted to touch on today in the last few minutes of the webinar. Number one is the whole issue with Google Plus review URLs. I'm sure you're well aware of this by now. It's been going on for a while, but a lot of people are using their Google Plus URLs to ask for reviews, not only in our system but in others as well. And those URLs are not working as people start converting over, their IDs away from Google Plus. And so this is a problem. If you're still in our system, if you're still using that Google Plus URL, then you're not going to get as good of a response rate, because people are going to come here and say, well, where do I leave a review? I don't even know where. So what we want to do is provide them a URL that goes directly to the review page and prompts them with the review box. And so one of the things that we did here is automate that. And I want to just quickly show you what we did. We've got a business lookup the based on the Google API. So when you add a new business here, whenever you add a business using our dashboard, we always had the business name here, but as soon as I start typing in, we start doing lookup. We do a automatic lookup for you and hopefully find your business. Right now, there are a few exceptions for service area businesses. The Google will not include those in this API, and you'll still have to enter in the address manually. But for most businesses, you'll be able to just pick it, and we will fill in all the data for you automatically. Um, and then we've got pre-fill for the business type. And what's neat about this is you don't have to fill it all in. And then when you go to the next screen, we automatically detect your Google URL for you when we build this out. And you can just check it out by visiting and verify that it's the right one. It's like, boom, it takes you right there. I had already left a review for this business. That's why it's showing this way. But what we're trying to do is just make it super easy for you as you add new businesses to find the proper URL. Now, if you're already an existing business and you would want to just do a lookup, you can do that here as well, and we'll find it for you. You can tweak the address and do what you need to do, but we have it right here in the online review section. You just do lookup and it will find it for you. So anyway, I just want to let everybody know about that. It's really important to go check your Google URLs in your system for you or for your clients and make sure that they're good ones, and we'll help you find the right one. If they're old URLs or they're not showing up properly, just use the lookup and we'll find it for you. All right. Any questions about that? Let us know. Okay, let us know now, or support at GetFiveStars.com, and we'll help you out with that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is we're moving forward. We've mentioned this before in a previous webinar about Zapier. We're super happy with how this is going. We are showing up now. We're still a beta app, but we're showing up in their directory, in their global directory. You can find GetFiveStars. We've also created a number of zaps that can kind of showcase what we can do. So for example, whenever FreshBooks, we have a Zap that's already created if you're using FreshBooks, and whenever you create an invoice, you want to send a feedback request through GetFiveStars. We also created an integration with Google Sheets, with QuickBooks Online, with MailChimp. So anytime you add a MailChimp subscriber, it can automatically go to your GetFiveStars customer list. These are just examples, and this is kind of a neat thing that Zapier does, is they ask you to create several examples like this just so that people can come up with ideas and go, what could I use this for? And so you can actually integrate with any of the apps in Zapier, over 500 of them, with GetFiveStars. It's just that these apps were pre-created for you, which just takes a few of the steps out. So anyway, I'm just urging, if you have any type of integration need at all and you want to hook up another system to GetFiveStars, please go out there and check it out. We want to show usage of our integration in the Zapier directory. It's one of the requirements. They want to see lots of people using it with different apps, and so it really helps us out a lot if you're thinking of this to to give it a try. What's nice about it is you don't need to know any coding at all. A Zapier account is free, and it's really straightforward to set up. Even if you're not a programmer or a technical person, you can basically just connecting the dots and you're boom, you've got it set up. And on top of that, we're willing to help. So if you have some integration that you want to do, let us know and we'll be glad to help out. We'll help you set it up and everything. So just send us an email to support@getfivestars.com and we'll help you get that set up. So anyway, if you were thinking about that, check it out.
And hopefully everybody understands too, like the Zapier integration is all about efficiency, right? So if there's another program you use to run your business that is a CRM or an email program or an accounting piece of software, what a Zap does is allows you to create that when you do a certain process in that other piece of software, it then sends that customer into our platform and we send them a feedback request. So it's really about saving you time. It makes it so you don't have to go into ours and upload a list or add a customer individually. So, you know, for resellers, finding out what your customers are using across accounting tools or CRM tools and things of that nature, you can definitely then push them to do these kind of integrations that it makes their life easier, allows them to use our platform without, you know, any additional work to things they're already doing, like creating invoices or adding someone to an email list or things of that nature. So again, I just would tell everybody, if you have any questions, if you need to be walked through it, if you need help setting it up, reach out to our support team, because we definitely want to make ourselves available to make that. We want to be a human Zapier and make it as easy as possible to connect you with that automation.
Yep, exactly. Just let us know and we will be there. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, everybody. I really appreciate you guys being here. If any other questions come up for you, just let us know. We're here. We're gonna, have this webinar we have every month. But we're around any time to answer your questions, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thanks so much for your time, and have a great week. All right. Take care.